Every powerful empire on Earth once collapsed simultaneously, not over centuries, in 50 years. And the explanation is scary. Not historians, not scientists, not even that one guy on Reddit who has read every book ever written about ancient history and won't stop bringing it up at family dinners like it's breaking news. Nobody fully agrees on why. And the best explanation we have sounds like something that could happen today, because things were really good. Egypt was at its peak. Think of them like the America of the ancient world, rich, powerful, and very aware of both. The Hittites ran most of modern Turkey, the only empire on earth tough enough to fight Egypt and not immediately lose. The two of them fought one of the biggest battles in history. Thousands of war chariots, entire armies. Neither side won, which honestly feels like the ancient version of two guys arguing on the internet for 6 hours and both logging off convinced they won. So they sat down and did something nobody in the history of the world had ever done before. They signed a peace treaty, the world's very first peace treaty. That document still exists today. There is a copy of it at the United Nations in New York right now, which means two kings from 1200 BC figured out how to stop fighting before half the countries currently arguing in that building did. Then there was Ugarit, a city on the coast of modern Syria. Think ancient Singapore, merchants from everywhere buying and selling grain, copper, tin, wine. Archaeologists dug it up and found thousands of clay tablets packed with trade deals and business records, so detailed that historians compare them to a modern company's files. Except these files survived 3,000 years underground, which is more than you can say for most startups. These were not people drawing on cave walls. These were connected civilizations that had survived for hundreds of years. They had been through wars, famines, political chaos. They were not the kind of thing that just falls apart overnight. And yet, between 1200 and 1150 BC, almost all of it collapsed, not slowly, fast. Like someone cut the power on the entire ancient world and nobody could find the breaker. The Hittite Empire just stopped existing. Their capital city burned to the ground. Nobody ever rebuilt it, gone, like it never happened. Ancient Greece fell apart so hard that their entire written language was forgotten. Not lost, forgotten. Greece then went through what historians call a dark age. That lasted 400 years. 400 years where nobody wrote anything down, because nobody remembered how, which is the ancient equivalent of losing your phone and realizing you don't know a single person's number by heart. Except instead of a phone, it was an entire civilization. Ugarit was destroyed. And here's where it gets genuinely haunting. Archaeologists found a letter in the ruins, written by the king of Ugarit in the final days of the city. He was writing to a neighboring king asking for help. Enemy ships had arrived. His cities were burning. He needed help now. The letter was never sent. It was still being baked in the oven when the city was destroyed, and Egypt barely survived. Their pharaoh Ramesses III fought off attack after attack and put it all on the walls of his temple. Like ancient social media, except instead of what he had for breakfast, it was just pure desperate survival. Every post a battle, every update a crisis. But after him, Egypt slowly fell apart and never came back. Cities abandoned, languages forgotten, trade routes gone. In some parts of the world, the historical record just goes quiet for hundreds of years. Like the whole ancient world switched off and nobody could find the remote. So what actually happened? There are a few theories, and none of them alone fully explains it, which is honestly the most unsettling part, because usually when something this big happens, history at least gives you one clear answer. This time, it just shrugs. The first is the Sea Peoples. These mysterious groups start showing up in Egyptian records around this time, described as unstoppable waves of attackers coming from the sea. Ramesses III writes about them like they were some kind of ancient nightmare. He documented entire battles against them, said no land could stop them, said they came from the islands and burned everything in their path. Nobody knows who they were. Seriously. After over 100 years of research, thousands of studies, countless arguments at history conferences, that I can only imagine get very heated very fast. Nobody knows where the sea peoples came from. Some think they were people from already collapsed civilizations just looking for somewhere new to live. Some think they were raiders who saw the chaos and decided to take advantage of it. Some think they were both. The honest answer is, we just don't know. They show up, burn everything, and vanish from history completely, like the ancient world's version of logging off and never coming back online. No explanation, no goodbye, nothing. The second theory is climate change. A 2022 study looked at ancient pollen in tree rings and found clear signs of a massive drought, hitting the entire region right around 1200 BC. Not a bad year. Not a bad decade. A drought that went on for generations. And here is what actually happens when crops fail for that long. First, the harvests get smaller. Then the food stores run out. Then the government can't feed its own army. And an army that isn't getting fed is basically just a very angry group of men with weapons who have nothing to lose, which historically never ends well for whoever is closest. Governments start losing control. Cities stop being protected. And people who are starving and unprotected do what people have always done. They move, they take, they raid, which is actually where the sea peoples start making more sense, because some historians think the sea peoples weren't some mysterious outside force at all. They think they were just the starving leftovers of civilizations that had already fallen. People whose homes were already gone just trying to survive by taking from whoever still had something, which means the sea peoples might not be the reason everything collapsed. They might just be what a collapse looks like while it's happening, like blaming the ambulance for the car crash. But the third theory, the third one is different, because the third one sounds like it was written last week. It's called a systems collapse. The Bronze Age world was way more connected than you would ever expect for 1200 BC. Copper came from Cyprus. Tin came from Afghanistan. Grain from Egypt. Bronze itself, the thing this entire era was literally named after, needed copper and tin mixed together from two completely different parts of the world. That whole chain had to work. Every part. Every time. No exceptions. Think about how insane that is. Your entire civilization, your weapons, your tools, your economy, all of it, depending on ships arriving on time from thousands of miles away. That is not a plan. That is a prayer. And when one part broke, it pulled everything else down with it. The drought killed crops. Starving people started raiding other cities. The raiding cut off trade routes. Cut off trade routes meant cities stopped getting the copper and tin they needed to make weapons. Cities without weapons couldn't protect themselves. Cities that couldn't protect themselves got raided. And a world that looked rock solid for centuries just fell apart in a single lifetime. Not because it was weak, because it was too connected. The same links that made it strong were the exact same links that spread the collapse everywhere at once, like a house of cards that had been standing for 500 years, so everybody just assumed it always would. And this is the part that stops feeling like ancient history, because that story sounds familiar. Right now, the country that makes most of the world's computer chips is a small island. One bad year, and the entire global tech industry grinds to a halt. The country that supplies most of the world's wheat just went to war. The region that controls most of the world's oil can close a single narrow strip of water and send fuel prices everywhere through the roof. Everything is connected. Everything depends on everything else. And nobody has a plan B. In 2020, a virus hit and the most powerful country on earth couldn't make enough surgical masks, couldn't get chips for cars, ran out of baby formula, not because they couldn't make those things, but because everything had been so perfectly connected that when one thing broke, there was nothing left to catch the fall. Like finding out your whole house was held up by one wall right after someone drove into it. Same problem. 3,000 years apart. Historians call what happened to the Bronze Age a perfect storm. Not one disaster. Several smaller ones all hitting a deeply connected world at exactly the same time. And the thing about perfect storms is they never send a calendar invite first. They don't trend on Twitter beforehand. They just arrive. The people living through this had no idea what was happening. They just knew things kept getting worse. And that is why we know so little. The cities burned. The scribes disappeared. The languages were forgotten. There was nobody left to write down what happened. Just silence. a gap in human memory that lasted centuries.